right, welcome everyone. Today is Employer Insights with NetApp today. To introduce everyone who's here today, I'm here along with Edlene Hernandez and Juan Vasquez. We represent the Employer Engagement Specialists of the SJSU Career Center. We regularly put on events just like this. You've probably attended one of our information sessions or tech talks. And we also assist with employers and students at the various career fairs throughout the year, which, by the way, next career fair coming up is going to be on the 23rd of next week. That is our undergraduate STEM career fair, and we have just started the session signups for that event. So if you haven't already, please sign up for that event. But enough about us. We are here to get the employer insights of Stephanie Chalk, who is Senior Manager of the Early in Career team at NetApp. And Stephanie, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Excited to be here.
So for those who are new to the Employer Insight series, what this will be is a series of questions, back and forth conversation with many different questions that we have regularly received from students about the field of recruiting, about how to apply for different jobs, and like things for applicants to consider in the job process. Following that Q&A, we will have a series for discussion of NetApp's available opportunities, both for current students and graduating students. And lastly, we'll have a Q&A session at the very end for any questions that don't get answered by you, which, by the way, if you have any questions throughout this session, if any answers from Stephanie or discussions that we have prompt any follow-up questions or topics that you want to know more about, feel free at any time to post them in the chat window. Edlene will be reading those and either responding to them herself, or she'll raise them with Stephanie and I when they're relevant to the current topic. And that's about it for the premise, but we want to know a little bit more about Stephanie. So Stephanie, if you tell us a bit about your role at NetApp and how you got started.
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Awesome. Wonderful. So I have been at NetApp for about 10 years now. And based on my journey, I actually graduated from NC State here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and went through a rotational program in the retail space after graduating. I was coming out when social media was a really big thing, and I was actually studying journalism and communication. And at that time, because of social media, we didn't really know the impact that would have on journalism and specifically print media. So I decided to take a totally different path, and I think it's a great opportunity for many of you to learn that. Is there is no straight and narrow path, and just be open to those opportunities and know that everything will fall into place how it's supposed to. And so I went through this rotational program, not knowing a lot about the retail space, minus that I shopped in retail, but learned a tremendous amount. And then decided after being in retail for about 18 months that I decided that technology in the IT space is actually where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in the human resources area. I wanted to then be I wanted to be in talent acquisition, really focusing on helping others. And then what led me to a recruiting role. So I started as a recruiter. I recruited everything from our research and development, so our software engineering, to our STEP positions, which is what we call our software engineering and test. So it's kind of that break fix type of role. All the way to QA, but then everything to the other extreme of sales, marketing, finance, IT, human resources, etc. So I have recruited for the full gamut of different roles across the country. And then I went into a talent outreach manager role, which was building relationships with universities like San Jose. So universities across the country. I was building deep relationships with faculty, staff, student organizations, career services, etc., to make sure that we had a well-recognized brand. We were not a brand, especially back, almost 10 years ago, that was as well recognized as it is today, just based on our industry. And so we are competing with some of the big, very well-known household names. And so based on that, we had to really work hard at creating our brand. And then that led me to actually being a program manager. So as you can tell, my path has been all over the place, always in talent acquisition and always in human resources. So then I've managed a variety of different programs for our early in career talent, our internship program, our early in career program, and then one that we call our S3 Academy, which is for someone going into a customer facing role. And now I get the opportunity to manage our entire global team. So I've got a team of 30 individuals that span around the world. We are based throughout the United States in a variety of different countries in EMEA, and also a variety of different countries in APAC and India. So it is my honor and my privilege to be here today to share a little bit more about NetApp. But also I like to take off that NetApp logo as well and really just give you helpful information that will help you, regardless of what industry you're looking to go into, what you are studying right now. Of course, I will tailor any of those questions accordingly, but I want to just help you as someone that's been in the recruiting space and someone that has truly helped place thousands of individuals at our company, but also at some of our peer companies as well.
Thank you. That's quite the journey. I got down retail, then journalism, then IT, and then the talent acquisition field with a focus on like program management. And those are the amazing journeys that we always like to hear and emphasize to students that what you graduate with and get immediately following college isn't always just set in stone. You can always like change your path.
That's absolutely right. And you'll find passions that you never knew existed. And so I would certainly challenge you to dig deep into what those passions are.
Absolutely. For our next question, it's about the job and internship search. That is, many students worry about finding internships and jobs during this economy and environment. What are your top tips for the job and internship search during, quote, these challenging times?
Yes, absolutely. So I think there's a handful that always come top of mind when I get this question. I think one is show up. And show up, remember your personal brand. It is important that you show up at an event like this. There are, over about 90 of you on this call, and you've taken the first right step. You've shown up. And so continue to show up and show up often. The more times that we see you and you also get to see us, the better. So show up at those career fairs, show up at the tech talks, show up at info sessions, show up at these types of events. If the company happens to be local like we are, that we can go and have some coffee chats or just other different opportunities, both in person and virtual, based on what your school obligations are, but also based on just the policies in that particular area. I would always just remind you, show up, regardless if it's virtual or in person, because that is your brand. I think that leads me, though, to my second, is that you should have a very well-recognized brand that's very consistent. When you shake somebody's hand, that's a first impression. When you submit your resume, that's also a first impression. When we go in and maybe we haven't shook your hand or we haven't received your resume, but maybe we find you on LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn profile could be our first impression. So just be mindful that's right, or an elbow touch or just a virtual hello as well. I love that in the commentary. Just remember that your brand should be very consistent. I should be able to get a good understanding of you in that 10 to 15 minutes that I have with you in a career fair environment, to when I see your resume, to then when I go on LinkedIn. So just be mindful of your brand. Also be aware of kind of social media and everything else that's out there. So just be really mindful of social media and that you're being searched, you're being Googled in one way or another, even if that's just on LinkedIn. It's a search of nature. In addition to that, I would certainly say to tailor your resume. And that should be very consistent. If you're going to apply to 3 different types of roles and they have varying different skill sets that are needed, you likely should have multiple resumes that highlight a variety of different skill sets that maybe one is, let's just say, one is one particular engineering role and one is slightly different. You might need to have 2 separate resumes. Maybe you're interested in marketing and you're interested in sales, 2 fairly different resumes, because we also want to be mindful that you've got to stand out. There are thousands of people that are interviewing for these roles and submitting resumes. You put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter. We are doing what we call Boolean searches. We are doing anything to help us narrow down that pipeline of thousands of people to the top 100, to then eventually to the top 50, and then to the top 20. So if your resumes are tailored based on the job descriptions, roles, responsibilities, etc., and those are being highlighted through your resume, then your resume is also going to come up to the top. So I see some chats going on. Certainly leverage your career services team to help you pull down, print the job descriptions, bring those with you, and then bring your resume and say, what can I do better to align the skill sets? I really want this job. And so it is a full-time job to look for a job. And so I know that it's a lot of time and effort, but I would challenge you that if you put in 110%, you're going to get 110% back. Between having a consistent brand across all platforms, paper, virtual, and then also electronically, but then also having multiple resumes that highlight your skill sets that might be in different formats, might also highlight different experiences, all because you have paid attention to the job description, the roles and responsibilities. And then finally, I would say as you get through and you start the interview process as well, follow up is critical. So I would challenge you to connect with the recruiter on LinkedIn if you're not already. Connect with the hiring team if you're not already. Connect with the company. We have company pages on LinkedIn. Connect with the company. We share a lot of really helpful information on our company pages. And that is just a great way to follow up. So you don't feel like you're, nagging. You can say, oh, I saw that you had a really strong end to your Q4 because it was posted on their LinkedIn. And you can then follow up. I heard you had a really strong Q4. I just wanted to reiterate my interest in the role. If there's anything you need from me at this point in time, please let me know. But also wanted to check in and see if there was a current status of where you are in the interview process. It shows your interest. It shows that you're paying attention to that company, but it also gives you a reason to follow up. It could be the same thing. I saw that you gave back to a local organization in the San Jose area and just wanted to say that meant so much to me, being someone that lives close by. And again, just wanted to reiterate how excited I am for this opportunity. If there's anything I can do, please let me know. So it doesn't always have to be a business follow-up. It can also certainly just be something that is part of their core values and their culture. But I would say follow up. And that could be following up after the interview. Within 24 hours, there should be a follow-up note in someone's inbox, just thanking them for their time. But then also, if you then ask that time frame, when should I hear back? Put it on your calendar. If it says 2 days, you should hear back. 2 days, hear back. And if you don't, feel free to follow up and then follow up creatively. Set yourself apart because that's part of your brand as you're following up throughout the process. Is really making sure you're reiterating your passion and your interest in the role. So those are some of my tips and tricks. But always just remember, I think if I can leave you with one thing to this question, is put yourself in the shoes of a recruiter. We get thousands of resumes. How do you stand out? Leverage Career Services and this team that's here to support you. But most importantly, spend time really making sure that the experience that you're highlighting on your resume is going to align to the role and roles that you're applying to, because then you will be found in the many different search functionalities that we're performing.
100%. I think that getting students in the mindset of a recruiter is one of our primary goals of the Employer Insights series. We want to know about your perspective and your insights, so we appreciate that. On the note of the follow-up, I think that's actually pretty relevant to the topic of what's getting discussed in the chat window. That is, students when they apply are as much as unfortunate as it is both for employers and students. Sometimes there is the case when a student applies and doesn't receive a response back, and I think that's relevant to what you were saying about the follow-up. Is that right?
Absolutely. So if you get a contact information, especially today would be a great example. You now have there's 95 of you now that will receive my contact information. If you've gone and applied, we will leverage that connection. Recruiters at the end of the day, even if, I'm not recruiting actively in my role anymore, but my team is, and so I will certainly make sure that we are sharing your resume. So certainly follow up, but then also keep your resume up to date. So if you've made updates to your resume, the additional way, if you don't, you're like, hey, I didn't get Stephanie's contact information. I feel so bummed that I didn't. It's okay, follow up in a different way. And the way you can follow up, try and find us on LinkedIn with a personalized note saying, I met you at the San Jose Career Insights event, or I met you at our career fair and just wanted to connect with you. All of a sudden, you get my contact information too. In addition to that, follow up if LinkedIn, you can't find it. Maybe there's a multiple Stephanie Chalks, which I'm sure there are. You happen to not be able to find me, then follow up in a different way. And that could be just keeping your resume as up to date as possible and then applying to more roles than you think are necessary. So if you see 4 finance roles, you're interested in those 4 finance roles, make sure you apply to those 4 finance roles, because then we can also see that. As a recruiter, I can see Stephanie, I'll use myself as an example. Stephanie has applied to 6 different roles. She must, and they're all kind of in that finance realm, or they're all in marketing, sales. Maybe they're dramatically different, but their resumes are tailored accordingly. You, again, that's showcasing how interested you are in the company. So be mindful, don't just willy-nilly apply. Certainly apply with the right intent, but you can keep your resume up to date and then continue to visit the website and continue to apply to the most recent and relevant roles.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm just taking down notes of what you're saying. So thank you very much for that. Uh, for the next question, and I'll contextualize this because for past Employer Insights events, we've had this question asked in the context of virtual internships, as we've been saying for the past year and a half or so, 2 years now. Wow. Many internships that have gone virtual, but as it's now February of 2022, what we're now seeing with many employers, including NetApp, is a hybrid internship. And so maybe Stephanie can provide us an explanation of what exactly is an internship and what can students expect.
Absolutely. So no, we are really excited. We, prior to the pandemic, just to give a little bit of context, we were pretty much 100% virtual or 100% in person, meaning that you were at one of our main locations and coming into the office, anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. Of course, the pandemic made us flip everything on our head, as it did everything, flipped us upside down, and that was no exception to our internship program. So we've been 100% virtual for the past 2 years. But now we are starting to, as part of our kind of corporation strategy, so NetApp strategy as a whole, is that we are going into a hybrid flex work model. That hybrid flex work model means, and it's very different for everybody, is that you can go into an office 5 days a week if you'd still like that. You can go in once a day or once a week. You could go in once a month. Or you could be 100% virtual. And so based on that flexibility, but also based on the opportunity to still have the office to collaborate, to meet with your colleagues, to have very productive moments in time together versus behind a Zoom screen, we want to give that same opportunity to our interns, building community, volunteering together, having social events, learning together from subject matter experts, having book clubs and having those small type of conversations. That community and collaboration, but also innovation, still has to happen in person to a certain extent. And then the rest of it can also continue to happen virtually. We've had some of our most productive quarters virtually, but I think we're all yearning for that human interaction. And so NetApp is providing us with that opportunity to say, as needed, you will have offices and facilities that you can go to do what you need to do and to be your best self when you show up at work. And if that means virtual one day and then in person the next, or having a team meeting or having a social event together, you're going to be able to do that. So we're bringing that now experience, because one of our biggest items through our internship program is that you get full exposure to NetApp, the company, the work, the culture, the people, and so much more. And so because we've pivoted now back to this hybrid flex work model, we want our interns to have the same opportunity. So what does that mean for you if you're looking for an internship at NetApp or any other company that might be showcasing that they're in a hybrid environment? Most likely what that's going to mean is that you will have the option to stay 100% virtual. You're most comfortable virtual right now. You want to be with your family, and your family is located in a different state or part of the country that maybe this particular company like NetApp might not have an office. That is totally fine. You will still, your day-to-day, your internship experience will not change. And I'll showcase why in just a second. But then if you are, here you are, you're going to be in San Jose for the summer. We've got an office right there on Santana Row, and you want to come into it, outstanding. You'll be able to meet and greet with people. You'll have social events that are going on, but we're going to be very intentional with the reason for why you're there. So maybe it's one reason or another, but also those social events, brown bag and educational sessions, volunteer opportunities will all, of course, have an opportunity to be in person. So it's really to give you that same exposure at the enterprise level of what we're doing as full-time employees, but also to build community in person and virtual. And so that just means that from a location perspective, you'll be either 100% virtual, or you'll have some component and ability to come on site to the closest office to you. And then in addition to that, we're going to have our events and offerings. Some events and offerings are going to be 100% virtual. You'll see 200 interns on a Zoom screen, and that speaker is going to be virtual, just like we are today. And we would never know where everyone is. But then there will be opportunities where we say this event is just for folks in the local San Jose area, and anybody that's in traveling and kind of working distance and traveling distance could certainly come. So if you happen to be, maybe you're working in San Diego, but you've got some friends and you're going to be spending the weekend in San Jose, great, come and enjoy. And it happens to overlap with an event, fabulous. Come and be a part of the social event or the volunteer event. So there's going to be very intentional ways to build community, get to know, and have deep relationships virtually with all different functions of the business. But then there's also going to be very intentional ways to have opportunities to build relationships in person with all different parts of the business as well.
That's great to hear. I'm always happy to hear of staff having their own agency over their work schedule, and I'm glad that also applies to internships in the case of NetApp. That's exciting to hear, and I'm happy to hear that. So the next topic is about the topic of resumes and cover letters. And what are your resume tips, and what's your stance on the relevancy of cover letters, and are they relevant to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start with cover letters, because I feel like sometimes it's the elephant in the room for some people. So from my opinion, I was actually just on a panel just about a week ago, and this topic came up. And so what we always say is most of it, actually there was 4 of us on this panel, and all 4 of us, it was one word answer. You just had to say, do you look at cover letters? Yes or no. All 4 of us said no. We are all different companies, all different industries. All of us said no. When we were able to though have the but statement, and that but statement was no but, was if we are looking at a candidate and we've got 2 top candidates, as an example, they are pretty equal, experience, knowledge, background, etc. Then we're going to go look at them. And absolutely, I'm seeing in the chat some do require them. But what we even said, even a company said, we require them, but I don't look at them. And sometimes it's just a policy that is, never been updated. And so we just want to know. But what I would stress to you, and the reason I wanted to stress that, is we do use it to a certain extent. Again, if there are 2 top candidates, we're going to pull as much information as we have in your file. Cover letters, if you've uploaded recommendations potentially, whatever it might be, we will go and take that look and say, okay, is there an opportunity here that we haven't seen on their resume or haven't seen throughout the interview process? And so it is it's helpful when we have a deciding factor that needs to be made.
That's like a tiebreaker.
In addition to that, oops, sorry.
It sounds like a tiebreaker, like if you have 2 similarly competing ones. Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely right. And what we also see it being done is telling a little bit about your story. Your resume is not necessarily a place that you can get as personal. LinkedIn is certainly getting there between, just the way that you can engage on LinkedIn and the way that you can post. You can certainly tell a little bit more about someone's story, their passions, their interests. And so a cover letter also is a great opportunity for you to tell a little bit more about your story, or why this role, or why the company, or why the industry is important and exciting, and why you want this opportunity. So I would say it's certainly one of the last places that we do go to reference, but it can always play in your benefit. And I would say a handful of times each recruiting season, I will go and leverage a cover letter, and it helps that decision. And it plays in the favor of somebody that has submitted a cover letter, but also, even again, if it's a requirement to submit a cover letter, still paying very close attention to that, making sure it's got the right job, role, the company. That's one of the most, attention to detail is critical. I don't want to see a cover letter and it's got the wrong position or it's got the wrong company on it. That then shows that you didn't have the attention to detail, and is that going to transfer over into the work that you're going to do at NetApp? So just be mindful that cover letters can also hurt you if you don't spend the accurate time in making sure that it is a good representation, again, of your personal brand. It is an extension of that personal brand that you continue to hear me talk about.
I think those are all great points. I'll also refer to the fact that I think Eileen has connected in the chat window some of our references on our Career Center website, that among our our resume building guide, we also have a cover letter guide. I think it's like part of the same reference. If not, it's on our list of references and resources on our Career Center website, and we encourage you to check it out.
Yeah, Patrick, it is a
Absolutely.
part of
So,
the same reference.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. So it sounds like you guys have a great guide to reference. And so just the first part, and I think I was seeing some myths in there that I loved, of some of the myths that you guys were trying to bust. And I think I busted a couple of those. And I think one of the reasons why that you'll see that cover letters are still being asked is, again, it is a deciding factor for some. And then sometimes it's just part of their policy. They want a full kind of end-to-end piece of your portfolio, and that includes, for some, cover letter, resume, and even maybe some a list of recommendations sometimes, just according to the company. So a few tips and tricks for resume. If I had actually a resume, I would love to have shared it with you, but just to think of it mentally, or if you've got your resume in front of you, one particular item that I always stress is one piece of paper that you have. One piece of paper that you have is full real estate for you. It's important. Leverage the space. Make sure that there is plenty of information on there. And if you've got white space, maybe you have a bullet and that bullet only comes halfway across the page, then you want to make sure, can you get any more information into that bullet so that you're leveraging all of that white space? So again, it's important real estate, and you want to get as much information on that piece of paper as you can. In addition to that, I would say also that SMART mentality. If you've heard about SMART goals, SMART is also important when you're thinking about your resume. The ones that I like to stress, time bound, put some parameters. So the T in SMART, put some parameters on the T. And so time bound is really important. In addition to that, I would say, is it measurable? So any results that you were able to drive is really important as well. So results, and then is it specific? What was it that you were doing, the work that you did? Be specific in the skills you used. If you use particular coding languages, be as specific as possible, be measurable in the results and the impact and the values that you brought. And then most importantly, be time bound. Did you do it in 2 weeks, 6 months, 12 months, etc.? So I would say, be mindful that piece of paper, it is a piece of property and you want to maximize that piece of property. In addition, if there's any white space that is not fully leveraged, can you get in a little bit more of the results that you're trying to drive or the content that you're trying to drive? And then in addition to that, that SMART model that I just mentioned, the final item is don't really think thoughtfully about placement of items. Most relevant should be up on the top. So don't, make sure if you've got one piece of your real estate, that one piece of paper for your resume, don't have 2/3 of it or 1/3 of it be your name, your address, and your objective. That's not going to get you hired. And so I always think about like your first half of your paper of your resume should, and think of this as the analogy I usually give if I have the piece of paper. How many times do you go read if you're reading an article and it's one sentence long and then it says click here to read more? Most articles nowadays, you have to click here to read more, but they have to captivate you and to say, oh, I want to go read more. That's exactly the put yourself in the feet or the eyes of a recruiter. That's us. We have to see something on that first half of your resume to then click here to read more and to get to the second part. So it's really important that that most important information is up top, but then also it's very thoughtful in the way that you are organizing it. Because if you organize it specifically, then we spend on average 30 seconds just reviewing a resume. So you've got to captivate us and say, oh, I see something there that I really like. And so I want to click here to read more. So again, just be mindful how important that real estate is, that SMART mentality, using as much space as possible. But then also that first half of your resume should have some of the most relevant experiences, and that could be professional experiences, education experiences, classroom experiences, projects. In addition to that, It could be maybe you're more on the engineering side and you want to list out all the different skills that you have, and maybe some of the other courses that you have, and that's going to set you apart. Great. Make sure it's up at the top, not down at the bottom. And then the other item that I would stress to you, and then we'll move because I want to be mindful of time and the questions that we still have, is when you're printing out that job description to kind of tailor your resume, look at some of those keywords. If they're looking for a particular language like C, C++, or maybe we're looking for certain marketing platforms and experiences, we would want to make sure that we see that pretty consistently throughout your resume as well. So if there's any time that you have noticed, wow, I used a lot of C, C++, Java, Python, etc., then you certainly want to make sure that that's seen throughout your experiences, professionally or academically as well. And then the same thing goes if you're non-engineering. Those skills and experiences, make sure they're highlighted throughout your resume as consistently as possible.
Thank you for that. We're getting a lot of engagement in the chat, which is terrific. I also want to be mindful of time because we have, I think, 3 or maybe 4 more questions here, and then the segment for NetApp's opportunities. So feel free to keep posting in the chat, and we will get back to any topics that don't get discussed now at the end of the presentation. Thank you for your patience. For that next topic, we're going to get into networking. Students know that networking is important, but they're not really sure how exactly to go about doing it. You kind of touched on this when discussing LinkedIn before. What is your advice on what's the best way to network virtually?
Absolutely. So I still think, and I've seen it done really well, is still have that kind of personal pitch, your career fair pitch that you have probably perfected prior to the pandemic. I know you probably had to adjust it now slightly because you've limited time in the virtual platforms that everyone is using. So really just be mindful of making sure, one, you're showcasing yourself in the best way. You can spend 3 of those 10 to 15 minutes showcasing who you are. What's your why? Why are you here today? Why are you interested in the company? And why are you the best fit for the role? So you should have that kind of top of mind in those first 3 minutes. And then in another 3 minutes, you should be able to highlight some of your key experiences. Because you have a very limited window and not that indefinite window that you used to have, especially as we're virtually in this environment, you want to then be able to highlight and say, here's some of my 3 most relevant experiences. I would love to dive deeper, but would like to actually ask you what experience you would like me to dive deeper in. I think sometimes in in-person events, it can take us a little bit longer to find out what is important to the company or that hiring manager. In this environment, virtually, we don't have that luxury. So I think it's nice to also, you want to showcase your skills, showcase your why, showcase your value, but you also want to make sure, are you hitting on the right topics that person is looking for, manager, recruiter, etc. So always making sure that you're asking, is there, you've had a couple seconds to look at my resume, is there anything you would like for me initially to touch on? And then from there, just making sure that you ask, what's the best way to follow up with you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it an email? Is it something different? Because you may not know. Someone may not be very active on LinkedIn and your request sits there for weeks and months upon months. Maybe they're a big person that they want to have conversations with folks via email. So I think one is just be mindful of the limited time that you have. Be captivating. How, again, you'll hear that word a lot from me because you've got to be intentional, but then you also have to captivate the audience. And that audience for us is either a recruiter, a hiring manager, somebody, a decision maker at some point in time. So I would then also say, really try and nail that virtual pitch, which has got to be a little bit shorter, more succinct, and a little bit more of the wow factor of like, wow. Because also you kind of get that true Zoom fatigue that we all get. But how many times do you get your professor, all of a sudden one of your professors is probably one of your favorite because they just know how to engage in a virtual room and they know how to keep you kind of moving in the right direction. Same thing. We're seeing a lot of the same people, same experiences, same kind of type of conversation, but that wow factor is one that really you want to kind of stay with us and say, wow, that person, Stephanie, she nailed it. and I want to go and learn more. And I want to set up a 30-minute conversation with her. So that wow factor should then lead you into the next step of the interview process.
And you were saying that a big aspect of that wow factor is sort of front loading the most interesting aspects and most relevant aspects in that first 3 minutes of the why. And you said it was why are you interested in the company or the role, and why are you qualified for that company or role?
That's right. And kind of like the why are you here today? Like, why does this make you excited? Because I love that allows you to kind of weave in a little bit of your story. Sometimes I've heard from people that are like, why am I here today? And a little bit of it, I'm a first generation college student, and I'm so excited to have an opportunity to leverage the skills that I've been utilizing in school, but now I want to apply them into a professional environment. And that's kind of the like, why am I here today versus like, hey, I just want to get to know you. That I think it's just that personal touch and personal element that can really resonate with us to tell a little bit more about who you are as an individual, since we don't have that kind of 15, 20 minutes that we would have at a career fair.
Great points. Thank you very much. The next topic, okay, I suppose I mentioned LinkedIn in the past question. This would be the question about LinkedIn here, and that is, what are your top tips for LinkedIn? And do you have any tips or advice for what students should not do with LinkedIn? Like, what should students do and not do?
Yeah, so absolutely. So I saw a question in here, and I think I can bundle it into this question as well, just around understanding kind of the keyword searches that recruiters are doing. So we do this in two platforms. So we have what we call an ATS, and I'm going to get a little technical here but I think it's important. So we have two platforms. We have an ATS system, which is when you go and apply to a company, you go and apply, and typically on the back end, there is a system that's collecting all that information. You've submitted your resume, you've applied, you've completed the application, and you probably have gotten now some email that says you successfully applied to Rec 12345 and whatever the job code is or the job title. In the back end, we have a system that we can do a bunch of different searches on to find resumes that will align to the roles that we're hiring for. LinkedIn is the second platform that we have. LinkedIn, we can take those same positions that are in our ATS and say, I want to post them on LinkedIn. And based on that, LinkedIn now becomes a search platform where, regardless if you've applied to the company or you have not applied to the company, I have special access that you do not have. I have what we call a LinkedIn recruiter. And so I have access that nobody else, unless they pay for it, and they have a company that is backing them, because they have to validate that you're a company that is recruiting candidates, and there are certain seats that are allowed. That is now becomes a search platform. So you never even have to apply to my role on LinkedIn, but if I find your skills there, then I can come and I can actually reach out to you. So there are kind of, as you think through that, one is kind of the pro tips there is your resume should be an extension of your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile should be an extension of your resume. Your resume, of course, is a little bit more limiting, because I'm sure you've heard, as we talk about myths, is how many pages should my resume be? And that I feel like is so differing in opinions. The guiding light that I typically have seen is like a 1 page per degree. So if you've got a bachelor's and a master's, you could have 2 or so pages. But I've heard also if you've got 2 pages because you've got a vast amount of experience, as long as it's all relevant, it makes sense. So I think there are just so many different areas to consider. But you could always go deeper in your LinkedIn. Instead of only having 3 bullet points on your resume because you're trying to highlight as much information, you can have 10 on your LinkedIn. You can also be really actively engaged. Posts, we can also see. So if you're really engaged on LinkedIn, you might start to come up in our LinkedIn searches more because you're a third connection, but you're a very active third connection. So I might know you through Patrick. Patrick is connected to you. So that's a second connection. But because you're engaging a lot with Patrick, and maybe Patrick and I's network are very similar, then I might start to see you in a lot of my searches. So I would say, as I kind of share with you, is dive a little bit deeper on LinkedIn. You've got endless information there. It's not hurting you to have more information there. It's only going to benefit you as long as that information is helpful and it's kind of still in that smart mentality. Number 2, be active, but be careful in being active. Naturally, there are a lot of taboo type of conversations that have integrated their way into LinkedIn. And you just want to be mindful of those. You could still engage in them, that's fine, up to you, but just be mindful that someone could make a decision, not wanting to, but they see it and they're like, okay, I'm probably not going to speak to them. And so I think just be aware of your engagement, be very active, but be very professionally active is what I share as you're going through your search. And then in addition to that on LinkedIn is get as much information. If you're part of clubs and organizations, if you have professors or students that you've worked with, or you have worked for a charitable organization and they are on LinkedIn, go and ask for their recommendation. And those pop up, and I can tell you how many times I've sat and looked at those. I've got a pipeline of 5 candidates, and I go and I tell my hiring manager, hey, by the way, I saw Stephanie. Her feedback was incredibly positive from some of her previous managers, a professor, and a student that she worked with on student government. That showcases a lot about you that we can never get in an interview process. So I think it's also be aware that it can be a really beneficial tool for you. So I would just say from a search functionality, we're using a lot of the same search functionality that we're using, from skill sets to levels of experience to coursework. We are doing all those different searches to have you pull up, and then we can send you an email because we've got special access on LinkedIn. And then the same thing goes. We're doing identical searches in our ATS to see who pulls up. And then there are matches. So if you've got 90% of the skills, or you have one that I say is a skill that you must have, and I see that 14 times on your LinkedIn profile, but I see it 35 times on somebody else's, that person that has it 35 times on their LinkedIn is the one that's going to pull to the top. So that's where, again, you've got to be mindful of what you're putting on your resume and tailoring it to the role, but also how can you tailor LinkedIn so that you're pulling up in a variety of different searches based on what the search functionality is for those roles that the recruiters are using. And then utilize the benefits of LinkedIn, recommendations, being actively involved and engaged, and seeing what kind of badges you can have throughout, and then post and engage and like and comment, because that's only going to help pull up in those active searches as well.
Thank you very much. I want to point out that we have maybe 5 more minutes left for these next 2 questions, if that's all right, because I want to save time for the other segments of this program. The next question is about what are the ways that your organization supports diversity and inclusion in the hiring and development of employees of various backgrounds and experiences at NetApp?
Absolutely. So a handful of things come to mind, and so I'll try and make this one short as well for the additional question. But I think one is the programs we have. So there are 3 programs that we have that you'll see listed on one of our upcoming slides. The intern program, what we call our NetApp Emerging Talent Program, and then the S3 Academy. All of those 3 programs, the focus is, number one focus is building community. The second is building knowledge and focusing in on your learning and development. The third is aligning our core values to the values of the individuals that are coming into the organization. And then 4 is to really try and showcase the culture of NetApp through a variety of different series and experiences. And so what leads us to that, though, is our employee business resource groups. Our employee business resource groups are a critical piece to our hiring practices, but then also our onboarding practices, and then our ongoing development practices. So we have, a variety of different employee business resource groups, which one is NetAbled as an example. Another, Women in Technology. Another is NetVet, so veterans or those transitioning out of the military. NNBT, which is for Blacks in Tech. Luna, which is for our Latinx community. And then we have our LGBTQ community as well, which is called Proud. So we have a variety of different organizations that really, one, they share awareness, but there is also a sense of community. So we all don't have to identify with one of those organizations. Like as an example, I am also part of NetApp. I'm not a veteran myself, but I want to support them and I want to be a voice for them. And I want to also be educated. How can I learn from you, your experiences, to be better, a better friend, a better employee, a better manager, and just a better overall citizen of NetApp? And so I would just say that our programs that we've created foster diversity, inclusion, and belonging based on kind of our mission and vision, but also the activities, our engagement with our employee business resource groups, and then the ability to show up as you are and who you are. That is one of the number one items at NetApp, is that we want you to show up how you are and giving all of who you are. And so that doesn't mean, if you have a tattoo on your arm, great, show it off. That is who you are. That's the unique person of who you are. You like to wear your hair in a certain way. Wonderful, wear your hair in that certain way. And we really actually highlight those really great cultural backgrounds, but also just ways to be uniquely you. And we actually have a big series that, how do I show up every day at NetApp to be uniquely me? And so I think it's just a very, really exciting way, but also we have very intentional ways to engage with one another in a variety of different settings. So I'll leave that one there so that we can finish out the final question.
Thank you very much. And that all sounds very exciting. Thank you for highlighting the employee resource groups as well. For the final topic for our predetermined questions, we have the topic of the interview process. And what are your general tips for successful interviewing?
Absolutely. So I think there's a couple items that I always like to highlight. Be mindful that you're always going to get a set of behavioral questions. Sometimes those behavioral questions are going to be very consistent, interview over interview. We're looking for trends, or we're looking for, but also very similarly, you're going to be asking some of the same questions to look for those similar trends as well. So be aware of the behavioral questions. I always say, tell a story throughout the interview. Don't read line by line by line of your resume. We don't want that. We want to tell a story. Tell us a little bit about your education journey, what led you to that, some of your coursework, maybe how that then now has allowed you to have an interest or really opened up a lens that you're very interested in this particular area. So I would say storytelling is really important, especially within behavioral questions, where you're wanting to probably weave in life experiences with what you've learned in the classroom, with what you can bring to the company that you're interviewing for. And not all of that's going to be highlighted on your resume. So I think some people get so laser focused that they have to cover everything on their resume. We don't expect that. No interviewer expects that. But we do expect that you touch on key pieces and that you can tell a story so that we get a really good view of who you are. On average, an interview is roughly 27 minutes. Within the first 90 seconds, most of the time, people have a gut reaction of they know that this person's going to do well. So that kind of first impression within your first 27 minutes, that first 2 to 3 minutes, can be one, and I would just say, I always say, to get to have a really good 90 seconds, go to your happy place before. For me, that's a cup of coffee, just sitting and rocking on my front porch. I have a really important business meeting. I know I'm going to go have a cup of coffee and sit and just kind of get my head in the right place. I don't have distractions. And that allows me to show up really confidently in that first 90 seconds, which leads me into then a confident remaining, 20 minup of a conversation. So not saying 90 seconds is your decision making, but it sets the tone of your interview. So show up professionally dressed, confident in nature. You don't have any distractions. You've got, a blurred background like myself, where I've got a treadmill behind me and a bed behind me. No one needs to see that. So I've blurred it out. So I think just show up with a professional setting, and then, that power of storytelling. I think the other item that I always say is ask for the job. And that sounds very salesy, and I promise it's not. But what I would say is ask for the job at the end. And the way you ask for the job is by saying, I want to be mindful of time. I see we only have 3 minutes left of the interview. Is there anything that I can highlight or I can dive deeper into that might not allow me, if I don't do that, to advance to the next round of the interview process? Is there anything else that you need from me before making a decision. I am really excited about this role. You've asked for the job. You've showcased how excited you are. You've also then made it an opportunity where if they have any additional questions, you can certainly ask that and dive into it and spend the next 3 minutes. Another way to ask for the job is just by simply saying, I know we're at time. I'm really overly excited about this opportunity. Would love to follow up with you. What's the best time frame to follow up with you? And then follow up within that same timeline. So you've asked for the job. You've expressed your interest. You now have an action to take from it. And that'll allow you to then move forward accordingly. So I would say ask for the job is just as important.
All right, and thank you very much for I was about to do a recap, but I think like you covered so many points that like I want to you covered so many points. I want to make sure I get to like all of them here. Pardon me. All right, and thank you very much for all the coverage of these topics. And we want to dedicate a segment for you to discuss your own opportunities with NetApp and what students can get from it.
Absolutely. So here, if you'd like, you can take a quick picture of the QR code, and that's going to take you to our landing page. Our early and career landing page has a little bit more just about our 3 programs. So our NET program, which is for all full-time employees with 0 to 3 years of industry relevant experience. Our internship program is if you are still actively pursuing your bachelor's, master's, MBA, or PhD degree. And then our S3 Academy program. It is part of our NET program, but it's for all customer-facing roles. So those going into sales, marketing, customer support, and customer success. And so you can learn a little bit more about our programs, our hiring timelines there. But then it also has direct links to all of our open opportunities. You'll see about 30 postings there. Do know that those are what we call pipeline requisitions. So we use that one position, let's just say as an example, finance in San Jose, but we will use that one posting to fill, anywhere from 10 to 50 positions. So I just want you to know those aren't the only 30 positions we have. We have almost 700 open and active positions today, and about 300, a little over 400 of those are active full-time roles. And then another 200 to 300 of those are varying since they're filling up very quickly, as another 200 to 300 are intern roles. And so just know that we are actively hiring. The most important piece, apply to any and all roles that seem of interest to you. We are, just like I mentioned, in a hybrid model, so you do not have to necessarily 100% relocate. If you would prefer to stay in that location, you would have the opportunity as long as that aligns to the business need. And then you will have an opportunity to also go into a local office if you are interested in doing so. And then just up at the top, a little bit, just a high level of what is NetApp. You've attended, and we're so thankful you came. And really here, we've got 130 plus global offices, about 13,000 global worldwide employees. We are a little over, we're about almost 30 years old, which is crazy to think. I almost like to always say 27 years, and those past 3 years have flown by. So we're almost 30 years old. And we are now headquartered out of San Jose. So we used to be headquartered at Sunnyvale, California. We recently moved to our new headquarters right there on Santana Row. And then we are doing everything from our core business, which is ONTAP, the #1 operating system in the industry, to now also migrating everything that has typically been in a data center, giving options to our customers and our partners for those that want to go and migrate into the cloud or have a hybrid cloud solution. And we hire everything from finance, marketing, IT, HR, sales, solutions engineering, and then engineering, and all of a variety of different engineering roles. So even though you might be like myself and didn't know much about tech prior to coming, there is a home for you. And then if you are studying computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, IT, there is certainly a place for you as well, and everything in between. So we welcome you to look at our website, look at that early and career landing page as well. And we would love to have some further conversations with you if you are interested. So thanks again so much for joining and hosting us today.
Likewise, and thank you for being here. I'll give a minute or two in case students want to like scan that QR code or jot down any notes on here. Stephanie, in the meantime, we're at like 2 minutes before our scheduled time. I want to check with you how much time you have available for a Q&A with students.
Yes, no, I can stay on it, a handful of minutes past, not a problem.
Not a problem. Then, Adeline, you were checking the queue of questions as they're approaching in the chat. Would you be available to provide Stephanie these questions?
Yeah, Patrick, I want to go ahead and go to raise hand that we actually have first in the chat. So Raka, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free to ask Stephanie any questions that you might have.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for providing so much insight about NetApp. Stephanie, it was lovely to know about this organization and the techniques we can apply during job apply. So I'm engineering management graduate student in San Jose State University. And previous that, I have over 10 years of experience in IT industry, specializing in project management or product or program management field. So I was wondering, having this experience, can I apply for NetApp as a full-time opportunity, because I'm going to graduate in coming months, like in the month of May. So what is your advice? Like how I have already sent an request on LinkedIn to you and just looking for some opportunity relevant to my career. So could you advise, like, how can I apply in NetApp?
Absolutely, yes. So that will go for anybody, is apply now. Most of our roles, those like 700 roles that I told you we have open and available, will all be closed and filled likely by I would say mid-April at the latest. So we've got a lot of work to do. Roles just keep coming at us in a really good way, which is exciting. But I would say apply now and then continue to apply. That QR code that was just on that previous slide that took you to the landing page will also allow you to go ahead and click in and apply to any roles. Those are just our evergreen requisitions, those pipeline recs that I mentioned, but you can go and apply to any open position as well. So I would say apply, don't wait to apply. Make sure your resume stays up to date. Connect with me on LinkedIn, and certainly your experience that you mentioned certainly aligns. But I would say for anybody, intern or full-time, if you haven't applied and you've got an interest and there's a role that aligns, apply today, this weekend, because those roles are going to go fast.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Stephanie. I want to get to a question that we had in the chat previously about LinkedIn certificates. So do recruiters really compare those from LinkedIn certificates to maybe certificates on Coursera?
Yeah, so I would say, and I think I was hearing all of that, and it was just around certifications and certificates. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are fabulous. I can't encourage them enough right now. Anything from certificates to certifications, for us, it just continues to show your areas of expertise. And also your aptitude to learn. So it's telling us more of a behavioral skill, which is that aptitude to learn. You likely had an interest but didn't have a lot of knowledge in it, which is why you took it. But then also it shares with us that you were likely, because we kind of understand the proficiency levels of certifications, is we can understand where you are in that learning journey. It's only going to help you. And so if you have that and you've received the logo, so you've successfully passed, I certainly encourage you to put those logos in a place that's most relevant for you on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, create a post around it on LinkedIn. You can tag it to one of your favorites on LinkedIn. So like I've got 3 posts on my LinkedIn just because it highlights different parts of our programs. And you could do the same thing as well. So I would say they are critically important because of the aptitude to learn, but also it showcases your skill set.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And if you are available to answer one more question, I'm going to ask Chris W. to unmute and go ahead and ask his question. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. I actually have a question about one of the internship opportunities. Will there be some available over the summer of this year?
Yes, so, and what was the opportunity? Was it a specific opportunity that you were wondering, or any opportunity this summer?
Yeah, just any opportunity, because I know you had mentioned like there's different roles that you have, like marketing, etc. But I just want to know, like, fruit? Okay.
Yeah, no, great question. Just want to make sure I was going to answer it right. So all of our internships for this summer, they are 10 to 12 weeks. You work 40 hours during, anywhere from 30 to 40 hours per week. You're paid a very competitive hourly rate. And during that 10 to 12 week internship, you're having a direct impact on the business. And those internships cover all areas of our business, from that marketing to engineering and everything in between.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So I know we are at time. Stephanie, do you have availability for one more
I do.
question? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna go
I
ahead and
do.
ask Preston to go ahead and ask his question. Go ahead, Preston.
Hi, thank you. I was wondering how students should approach the interview or the application process when they don't really have any experience to begin with. Like, I don't know if objective statements are better than nothing on like a resume, and
Yeah.
whether or not like it would put them at a severe disadvantage. Like, oh, because you lack any realistic relevant experience, then you should probably look for I would say not as prestigious roles such as NetApp to start to take steps towards. Like, I don't know if that's the impact.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm thrilled that you asked it. So we're big believers that you've got to get experience somewhere. If you don't get experience somewhere, you're never going to get experience. So we understand that. What I would just say is that is where this team that is hosting this event comes into a critical role. What I would say is you've got very relevant experience, even if it's not professional experience. Look at your coursework alone. Your coursework alone, your projects that are, the projects and deliverables, that should be the core part of your resume right now. Your clubs and organizations. What are you actively doing in those clubs? You don't have to play a leadership role in those clubs and organizations, but is there an opportunity? Have you created an app? Have you participated in a hackathon? Any of those extracurricular activities in your student organizations or anything else that you're engaged in on campus, we want to see that, because for an internship, we're not necessarily hiring you for your expertise. We are hiring you to give you the relevant skill set so that you can apply what you're learning in the classroom to then your professional experience. But we have to know what you are studying. So that's really where it's critical that you can highlight your coursework and what you are striving to learn. And then any of those extracurricular activities that you're engaged in will be helpful. An objective will never hurt you. I can promise you. Now you'll come to a time, probably at some point in time, where you're like, is that objective providing me with value? And at the time where you answer no, that's the time that objective comes off your resume. But where it's telling a little bit of your story is that you're seeking an internship in this particular area because you have these skills, then that objective is a critical piece, because maybe without that objective, we would have never known what you were looking for in the skills that you have to bring to the table. So it's a really important question. Again, probably one of, it's a question that's near and dear to my heart because I get it all the time, is I don't have relevant experience. Yes, you do. Number one, yes, you do. It is just, how can we help you showcase that experience from the classroom and from those extracurricular activities, so that you can get the professional experience and then continue to build on that. And then the rest is going to be history. You'll look back and be so excited for what you've been able to achieve. So leverage this team. And then I'm always happy if you meet me out on campus, virtually or in person, always happy to help provide some feedback there too.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We understand we have like many questions in the chat, and we appreciate everyone's engagement and wanting to connect with Stephanie. And Stephanie, let me frame it like this. For those in the audience who still have questions for you, what is the best way that they can contact you with their questions?
Absolutely. So I would recommend, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You might even find some of those answers there, just based on my engagement. And then also, if there are certain questions, I would say, honestly, drop them in your LinkedIn chat. That LinkedIn chat, I am more than happy, or the LinkedIn message, sorry, using the word bad terminology there. The LinkedIn message, feel free to introduce yourself and that you had a question. I will gladly follow up with you. connect with you. And then you're also going to have my contact information once you connect with me on LinkedIn, and feel free to follow up that way as well.
Great. Stephanie, thank you very much for your time, for all of your terrific answers. I took a page of notes. I'm sure like many students here did as well. And want to say thanks to all the students showing up today for today's Employer Insights. We had some great questions, great conversation topics. We could go on for a while about this topic, but for the time being, if you have like further questions for Stephanie or want to connect with her in other ways, please connect with her on LinkedIn, like she said. But for the time being, I think we'll be closing this Employer Insights event for today. So thank you all very much for coming, and thanks again to Stephanie for being here.
Bye, Stephanie. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.